I will turn to you, Felipe. Felipe is the CEO of the Colombian Diversity Chamber. Felipe, tell us a bit about yourself, how you came to do the work that you do now, but also what you see as the major barriers to LGBTIQ inclusion in the economy, and how we can knock them down so that we can live dignified lives. Over to you, Felipe.
Thank you very much. Well, good morning for everybody. As you mentioned, my name is Felipe Cárdenas. I run the Colombian Diversity Chamber of Commerce since 2012, thanks to the support of the NGLCC, the National US LGBT Chamber of Commerce that is based in this city too. They have been our mentors and our strong supporters. And lately, thanks to the generosity of Outright, we have been able to work a lot on LGBTQI+ inclusion in my country. I would like to share with you some facts and numbers related with Colombia. Colombia is a country of 52 million citizens these days, and we have 3 million of Venezuelans living in our territory for the last 5 years. They have moved there, which is important to highlight in our conversation because remember, back in the 80s and in the 90s, we were the ones fleeing our country. Now we are the ones receiving people to our country. We were not used to that. We had a very dramatic and long internal conflict of over 50 years that kind of came to, not a conclusion, but to a better status after the peace accord we signed in 2017. And since then, a lot of people start migrating to Colombia, especially our neighbors. But we as a society were not trained not even to coexist within ourselves. Now we have the challenge to also coexist with people that are coming from our neighbor countries. And that is specifically tackling sexual diversity. If you take a look on the map of South America, we are in the northern portion of South America, and the neighbor countries we have, we call ourselves the Andean regions because of the Andes Mountains. So we have Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Bolivia. And out of those 5 countries, we are the only country with full LGBT rights legislated already. Maybe Ecuador has marriage equality, but nothing else. And interestingly, Colombia started becoming, as some of our neighbors said, a small oasis for LGBTQI+ people, not only for these countries, but also from Panama, that is our very close neighbor, going into Central America, with one of the toughest realities for LGBTQI+ people. Panamanian parliament is trying to legislate to write in the Constitution that marriage equality will never happen, like very specifically. So that's going 40, 50 years before the different conversations we are having in the region. But also if you take a look on the Caribbean islands, and we have a very, very important representative here from the Caribbean, from the Dominican Republic, most of the Caribbean islands, from the Spanish-speaking islands of the Caribbean and also the English-speaking islands of the Caribbean, I would say different than Puerto Rico, nobody else around in the Caribbean have full LGBT rights implementation, and Puerto Rico just got what is legislated through the US. So in that sense, also those countries are looking into Colombia as a possible destination to coexist and to live. And I'm giving you this context because back in 2012, a group of different entrepreneurs, I was one of them, I have the privilege to come after living a few years in Mexico working for corporations like these ones, when I decided I couldn't wear a suit and a tie on the daily basis and be in the closet as an openly gay individual, I quit that job and moved back to Colombia and decided to become an entrepreneur myself. And the US Embassy invited us to have a conversation about economic inclusion. And the hypothesis back then, in 2012, that we did when we launched this entity was what would happen once we get LGBT rights. Because we knew we were walking that path. LGBT movement in Colombia is dated since 1976. So we have walked a few years in order to get LGBT rights in place. But then we asked back then in 2012, what would happen? And then we opened an entire agenda of economic inclusion because we believed once we get LGBT rights in place, another challenges will arise. The fact that today in Colombia, you can get married with a same-sex couple, you can adopt with a same-sex partner children, you can transit or transition illegally in your ID, There is an anti-discrimination law. There is also public policies that support us. Having all of that is not a guarantee that we can eat, that we can pay rent, that we can educate ourselves, that we can travel, that we can recreate, that we can have families, that we actually can access to a decent and fair retirement. So those new questions are more on the economic field of the conversation. And then we have been running this entity with a great group of individuals. I have the privilege and the challenge to lead a team of 52 individuals that are working full-time in our offices in Bogota, delivering more than 10 hours per day, trying to impact and support as much as LGBT people we can. But we realized that question that we asked ourselves back in 2012 was real, because now if you are going to Colombia, you can access all of that. If you are a Venezuelan, between 52 and 55 hours, you can legalize your status, because we pass an express path for them to gain a permanent residency in our country. A lot of Dominicans are coming to Colombia to get married. A lot of Ecuadorians, Venezuelans, and Panamanians are moving to Colombia trying to pursue a job. And that is more or less viable to happen. But then after Brazil, we are the second country within whole Latin America with most violent assassinations of transgender individuals. And that's very hard. Our people is still pretty excluded. The so-called LGBTQI plus agenda is only white, cis, G agenda. It's not generally LGBTQI plus agenda. Still, a lot of women that are LGBT struggle to get access to financial inclusion, but also to a formal job. We have recognition of non-binary people in our constitution and the IDs. But most of our banks, for example, don't even have a field for people that identify as non-binary. So how we are going to provide them at least access to a bank account? Things like that are still happening in the country. So I would say the greatest challenge, and this is probably an open conversation for all the countries and territories that are achieving LGBT rights, is that our agenda and our work and our duties is way beyond accessing to LGBT rights. Because once we get them, the conversation will go to another challenge, that is how we are going to guarantee these people that finally are not second-class citizens, have the access to everything they need to thrive.
I'm going to turn to you, Felipe. Are there some questions you want to take on and close?
Yes, there was one around here specifically about best practices for people that is looking for employment opportunities. Thanks to the program we are delivering with Outright in Colombia, with the funding that very generously we have been given by you. We have been working with a lot of LGBTQI plus Colombians and migrants, helping them to gain more skills, to make them more eligible, to be able to achieve successfully selection processes in different companies, corporations, entities. And what we have seen that has become very effective is that we also provide training to the human resources department of those companies, businesses, corporations, how to be more sensible towards the fact of having sexually diverse talent. In that sense, there is quite a few of corporations that have removed the requirement of previous working experience, and now interviews and competency assessments are being done or executed by what do you know or in what you are good at. And those are the conversations that are driving the job descriptions of the different job postings we are sharing with the individuals we want to impact. That is very powerful, because what is that just little shift of the process, removing a requirement of years of experience in X, Y, or Z topic, is giving access to a lot of people from the LGBTQI plus community in Colombia that they can demonstrate, not only by saying in an interview that they are good at, but actually showing by some tests and assessments that they can actually perform. And this relies on a thesis that we believe is probably the future, at least in Colombia, for LGBTQI plus recruitment. That is, we as businesses don't want you despite you are LGBT or because you are LGBT. We want you by your talent, period. Sexual diversity shouldn't be even part of the conversation. Later on, when you get inside the businesses and you start interacting with people, sexual diversity, of course, might arise or not, in any portion of the conversation, interacting with colleagues. And the only thing that the businesses and corporations need to guarantee is that you are in a safe space. But that is more powerful than saying that we are looking for LGBTQI plus talent. Because at the end, if we promote employment programs that are focused on LGBTQI+, the problem you are going to have is you are going to have businesses full of sexually diverse individuals, but the environment can be hostile if you don't prepare the environment to receive those individuals with the sexual diversity. So that's a very powerful best practice we would like to share that is working thanks to this program. The second thing is pretty linked with intersectionality. And this is linked with the questions of boycotts, but also of the massive reaction we are seeing of corporations investing money against LGBTQI plus issues. We see a trend in Colombia now. We have the first progressive or left politically oriented government in history of our country, which is finishing in 2026, and for sure it will come a different government, maybe from the total opposite side of the spectrum that we are having right now, like the one that is beginning here in January. And in that sense, what we have seen that is very powerful is we are not confronting those agendas, fighting back, that we are here, we are going to stay and we are relevant, but mixing with intersectionality. When we open the umbrella and we talk that LGBTQI plus people is not only sexually diverse individuals, but we are also women, we are also migrants, we might have people with disabilities, but also different race and ethnicities, different range of ages of all of us, we become more powerful. Because under that umbrella of intersectionality that I personally believe is the future of the sexual diversity agenda in the following years, that open umbrella is so powerful. It collectivizes such amount of people that fight it against that. It will be practically fighting the entire society. Mm-hmm. And then we become not like completely bulletproof, but at least it will be harder to fight against us. And I do believe we shouldn't fight those corporate or even political efforts trying to go against that as by just declarations. We have been investing in LGBTQI plus movement, have been investing a lot of time and money fighting back by our speech and the strength of our activism, but actually the power of data and the power of best practices and the power of testimonials are the ones sometimes senior leadership in corporations are lacking of to see, to hear, to have evidence of that. So my invitation will be let's fight smarter, not harder.
Yes.
And let's understand how to speak in their own language. Senior leadership in corporations look for data, for profitability. They go to sleep thinking in profit and they woke up thinking in profit. And we are a great source of profit, not only by talent, but also as customers and also as suppliers. I do see a lot of value that we can add on the value chain, becoming stronger entrepreneurs, more competitive small business owners. And actually, if I cannot get unemployment, I can become an entrepreneur and later a successful small business owners and plug in my business with those value chains of the different corporations, like this one that is hosting us today, that is saying, we welcome you. Yes. And I believe that will be more powerful than only fighting back with all of our efforts of our speech, but actually speaking their own language. That's smarter and not necessarily working hard.